It is a family disease. Drew Wilson is striving to help families and individuals find the path to recovery. If he's not at Steps Recovery, you might find him at Alcoholics Anonymous or a junior high school helping teachers scare kids straight, or rather, letting them know there are resources available in their times of need. Regardless of where he is, he's practicing his integrity or fostering connections in programs like Sober Softball. Enjoy. Welcome to the Illuminate Recovery podcast. We shed light on mental health issues, mental illness, and addiction recovery, ways to cope, manage, and inspire. Beyond the self-care we will discuss, you may need the help of a licensed professional. My name's Kurt Neider. I'm a husband, a father, entrepreneur, a handyman, and a student of life. I avoid conflict, I deflect with humor, and I'm fascinated by the human experience.
And I'm Shelley Mangum. I am a clinical mental health counselor, and my favorite role of all times is grandma. I am a seeker of truth, and I feel like life should be approached with tremendous curiosity.
I ask the dumb questions.
I fill in the gaps.
We are so excited today to have Drew Wilson. Drew is from Steps Recovery. He's been there for quite a few years and makes a big difference in the industry. I know Steps has got a pretty big footprint in the substance abuse and mental health recovery industry, and in our neck of the woods anyway. And so, Drew, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I know we've been sitting here chit-chatting a little bit about some of the different things that you've been doing, but my question to you is, you've been with Steps for several years now. Is that what you dreamt about doing when you were young?
Definitely not, before I got into addiction, because I didn't drink or do drugs all through high school or anything like that. I grew up in a religious home, and so I didn't start using until my mid-20s when I got prescribed by a doctor, after a health thing, and soon discovered that it solved not only the physical pain, but some of the other stuff that was going on in my life as well. So I had zero knowledge of this world of addiction recovery. I knew what I'd seen on TV and movies, just like most of the population, and so that had never crossed my mind, ever, And I was a guy that grew up thinking that I didn't really have any talents, because I thought of talent in the traditional sense of good at sports, good at music, can sew really well, later in life I found out, my mom, I remember, would tell me talent goes beyond things that you can do physically, it's the ability to have empathy for someone naturally, the ability to connect with people, it's a talent. And it took me a long time to realize that and accept that and use that to my advantage. And it turns out, this industry is perfect for it. That I do have that ability to empathize and have compassion for someone and connect with them and help them find hope.
That seems like that's an interesting thing to call a talent. You don't usually hear people. Maybe you don't hear people say, I've got this talent, I can empathize with people, but I think it is. I think you can learn to do it, but I think when it comes naturally and easily, it is a talent, and a real powerful one at that.
Yeah, because a lot of people, there's people that find it really hard to do, and sometimes it does take practice. Whereas my brother-in-law, naturally good at sports, doesn't take much practice, where other things that I'm good at, he might have to practice at.
I like that too, because we all come, individually and with a little bit different twist and shape and size, and to be able to identify that just because we're different from, the next guy on the street, we still bring something to the table that's really incredible.
Yeah.
I like that your mom brought that up.
Yeah. She's a good one.
And so you got into substance use, prescription drugs for just pain, and where'd that take you after that?
So I'm the kind of the addict that it escalates pretty quickly. We've all probably heard the parallel of Jekyll and Hyde. Where and that's really what it was for me. I can look back on my life and see those behaviors, the addict behaviors, long before I put a substance in my body. But and I was always a pretty good kid. I was a liar and a manipulator from a pretty early age. But overall, I was a pretty good kid, um, and it took that identity away from me completely. I went from just getting prescriptions from a doctor, quickly to doctor shopping, finding more ways to support my habit. And before I knew it, I was committing burglaries. I was a naive, LDS kid from California and had no idea where to find a drug dealer. So my only thought, or my only way of supporting my habit, was first stealing painkillers from houses I was already invited into. Friends and family, finding an excuse to go to the bathroom, go through the medicine cabinet, whatever, and then pretty quickly graduated to homes I was not invited into, which we also call burglary. And the science behind it, and the prefrontal cortex shutting off and the midbrain kicking in, and when I first heard that, first saw Pleasure Unwoven, I was like, oh yeah, like that's totally what happened to me, and it's something it doesn't make it excusable, but it's explainable,
Well, you talk like everybody knows this. And I think if you're in the industry, maybe most of the people in the industry know, but I still think there's a huge, I think there's still, we've made a lot of progress, but I think there's this gap between really understanding this is an illness.
Yeah.
Darn nabbit. This is an illness. This is not a choice at the point where the addiction is taken over, right? Because that prefrontal cortex has shut down. Mm-hmm. It's not thinking. That's that executive part of your brain. It just stops making those executive decisions, and the drug becomes more important than your relationships, more important than eating and having a place to live, and you just don't care about anything but the drug.
Yeah. And it's hard because when I explain that to people, I don't want it to feel like I'm giving this person an out, like they don't have to take accountability and own up to their issues. And that's why I say it's explainable but not excusable. There is this level of, it's an illness. Some level of choice was taken away from them, but I still gotta deal with. It's my decision to deal with it and face it and overcome it and make amends, and make things right.
Yeah, which is important. That accountability piece is important. You may need some help, right? You may need some help to stop using, but then you get more choices back as you do that healing process.
Yeah.
Which, absolutely.
But it's my favorite. One of the favorite parts of my job is talking with the families, especially ones that are new to this, and offering them this information and helping them understand and giving them some hope, that their child or their brother or sister or whatever is still in there, we just got to do some healing, and that stuff will start coming back. You'll start seeing the light come on, and that's the best part, right? Is getting a person in the door. 2 weeks later, you see them again, and their countenance is back and the light's back on, and so it's exciting stuff.
But that phrase you used is also kind of a good source for that hope, right? Of like, if you're in the shame cycle, right? If you're a burglar, right? Mm-hmm. So now you're 25 years old, you're breaking into houses or whatever. Mm-hmm. Looking back on, what did my mom and dad teach me? Where did I learn this? None of this is something that you were taught.
Right.
This is all something you're going to internalize that now turns into, I'm a bad person, I'm not redeemable, I can't get out of this type thing. And when you start to learn, there's an explanation for this, mm-hmm. right? This isn't because I'm an evil person.
Right.
I have a problem. And guess what? There's millions and millions and millions of other people who have this exact same problem. So it doesn't give you the excuse, like you said, but it does help you be able to say, okay, there's a way out, right? Like there's a path, and this is a human thing, right? This isn't part of a I'm broken thing. This is the human experience, and helps you to be able to understand that. I think that part's
and that's good for the parents to hear too, because I know my parents had this sense of failure. What did we do wrong? And maybe they took a look at some stuff, and of course we picked it apart, and there were some things that maybe led to the way I think and the way I perceive things, but ultimately they were good parents. They didn't do anything wrong. they beat themselves up for a long time. We raised this kid that became a heroin addict and a criminal. But what I tell them now is you also raised a young man that was able to overcome all that stuff, that had that strength.
So you said once you started to get addicted, then you realized this was something that you had seen in the past, even though there was no substance.
Yeah. Once I started,
what were the ways that you had seen that?
Once I started getting that education and realized that it wasn't really a drug and alcohol problem, it was a me problem. I started looking at that stuff. Like I became a liar at a pretty young age, and for a few reasons that I can pinpoint. I was kind of teased, 7th, 8th grade. I grew really fast. By the time I was in 8th grade, I was like 6 feet, 6'1", and when you grow that fast, all of a sudden you have all this extra mass. You become a little uncoordinated. You don't know how to operate your body all of a sudden. And so it didn't translate to great athleticism, and that was something that I felt was important to my dad. That's what I perceived, was that he had a son that was good at sports, and my friends were good at sports, and I got teased, and developed these negative self-beliefs about myself. I'm not good enough. I'm stupid. I'm bad at sports. And so I started lying, right, to make myself look better, sound better, be cooler than I actually was, because I couldn't stand the thought of not being welcome into that cool crowd that I was in at that age, and so I started making things up about myself. 2, again, not to place any blame on my parents, but at that age, I thought, when I told the truth to my parents, I felt like I got the same kind of punishment as if they just caught me lying. So my thought was, well, I might as well lie and have a chance at getting away with it, so it's danged if you do, danged if you don't, so yeah, I became a pretty masterful liar, and a chameleon at a young age, and little things throughout those teenage years. I remember stealing a $50 bill from my friend's house when his parents were out of town, and left money for them, and just little things like that, little behaviors that popped up that I can look back and be like, oh yeah, it's been there a while.
Mm. Well, and you said you didn't have any talents. Those are some pretty sweet talents, right?
Right, yeah. Just got to hone them in the right way.
And if you hone them in the right way. But it's interesting to me that I see, I've worked with people that are recovering from addiction or mental health or whatever, and I'm always blown away at just how high functioning, how incredibly talented they really are.
Right.
Most of the time, they're probably some of the highest functioning people out there, and it's like they have to have this as kind of a handicap, keep them from overrunning the rest of us, right? Because they're incredible people, but I don't think they can see it, just like you talked about.
It's remarkable in my experience with, and we haven't got to this yet, but with going to jail and prison. Super talented people in there, they come up with these amazing ways to sneak drugs in or get away with things, or they're really great artists, and I'm like, these are super talented, smart people. Like, man, if only they could use it for good.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and they do, right? Look at what you're doing.
Yeah, it is possible,
yeah.
For sure. I've seen a lot of success stories.
Well, you've talked about families and being able to give them hope and help them understand the dynamics of addiction and how that's, how you can help their loved one, get recovery. But so often there are families out there that this is new to them. They don't really know. They weren't taught how to handle these kinds of problems. What's there to help people, help families, help people prepare or be more knowledgeable about mental illness and addiction?
So there's plenty of resources. The trick is willingness, and the motivation to seek it out. Obviously there's Al-Anon. We all know about Al-Anon, where you can go. It's family members, loved ones of alcoholics. It's a support group like AA, and there's groups everywhere, where they can get together. There's plenty of books to read about setting boundaries, helping your loved ones. get through this. I know a lot of treatment centers have family support groups, family night, where they welcome them and have them as part of the group, and I think it really comes down to it's a family disease. It's a lot of the times affects the family as much, if not more. I know I probably took several years off my parents' lives. And so it all just comes down to where's the willingness, and where's their willingness to check and see if they have any accountability, if there's anything they could do or could have done or could change, to help their loved one. Are they enabling them? Are they, are they kind of a hindrance in their recovery? And it's hard to do. My parents bailed me out of jail the first 2 times, before they realized, wait, we got to leave them there. They wanted to protect me so much from experiencing difficult emotions and difficult times that they didn't realize they were just kind of compounding it, and it's, as long as I had that safety net, as long as I always had a way out, there was no motivation for me to recover, so it's when people first started setting boundaries and telling me no, and that's when I started getting better.
Well, and again, I'll come back to, you said, there's Al-Anon and there's, AA stuff and there's all of this stuff. But I think I was probably well into my 30s before I knew Al-Anon even existed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I knew there was AA, but I really had no clue what that looked like, right? And so I suspect there's still a lot of people out there that don't realize there's some really great resources that they can take advantage of for free and be preemptive to whatever's going to come into their life. Because I don't know of anyone that escapes being touched in one way or another by substance abuse and mental illness.
Right.
And so I think what you said, the willingness or the ability to go, I don't know what I don't know. Let's go see if I can learn something.
Yeah. I think that's the key is, are you willing to recognize that maybe you need to do some work as well?
So being in prison, you met a lot of people in prison, it sounded like.
Mm-hmm.
What was that experience like for you, and how did that change things?
So prison was interesting. I did 3.5 years in state prison down in Gunnison. My first 7.5 months was actually in the Utah County Jail while I was awaiting sentencing and fighting charges and all that, and then. So I was still like using drugs even in there, people find ways to get things in. My first 7 months when I was in the county jail, I would use some stuff when I could get it. And then my first few months in prison, I was using, so even after that, even after all that, getting pulled away from my daughter, my life, and the rest of my family, my freedom, it wasn't enough for whatever reason. I was still just trying to self-medicate and not feel, and then I had an experience in there where it wasn't anything like crazy drastic, other than I just, broke some rules in there, got some sanctions put on me, some consequences, and for whatever reason, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, where just the switch flipped and I'd had enough, and I decided to get to work, the sanctions that I got put on, I was in a program called the Hope Program in Gunnison, and I was a senior mentor in the program, where you get paid like 42 cents an hour. I think it's like 86 bucks a month, which is kind of big bucks in prison. I was balling, but. I got in trouble within that program, and they took that position away from me, and then they put me on something called RRG, stood for Remedial Reform Group, and it's for 60 days. I had to get up at 5:30 in the morning and clean for 3 hours a day within the section. I had to do 5 pages of journaling. They took away my TV, my CD player, my visits, my yard time, phone calls, commissary. All that got taken away from me. And I'm a huge San Francisco Giants fan, and they were in the World Series at that time. So my TV getting taken away, yeah, that was that was rough, and that was enough. I was like, all right, I'm missing the Giants. I got to change. I'm just teasing. That wasn't like the whole reason, but something clicked at that moment, and and I decided to start taking advantage of some of the resources that I had. During that 60-day period, I didn't have access to any classes, but I did have access to books, and that's when I picked up some books, some good books. That's my mindset started changing. I read Man's Search for Meaning, which changed my life. Here's this guy that's in a concentration camp in World War II, and he's choosing to have a positive attitude and choosing to make it count for something if he did survive it, and he's getting beaten every day and starved, and his family's, God knows where, and he's choosing his attitude. And I was like, well, if he can do that there, I can do that here, So I had 2.5 years left, and I started adopting that attitude. Like, okay, I can choose my attitude every day. They can take all this stuff from me, but I can choose to be happy, and I started recognizing ways that I could change my behavior. It clicked all of a sudden that behavioral changes and learning new behaviors is just like learning anything else, whether it's the piano or golf or whatever. When you learn to play the piano right, you start out with something small, like Mary Had a Little Lamb, and you practice every day, and you try newer songs, harder songs, and you get better and better and better. And no matter how much you practice, you still suck sometimes, right? And so what I realized is it's the same thing for gaining integrity. I was out on the yard one day, and I had a candy wrapper, and I was going to throw it on the ground. And then I had the thought, and the definition we've all heard of integrity. If I was with other people, would I do this? And the answer was no. So why am I going to do it when I'm by myself? And so I realized at that moment, like, this is a moment for me to practice and start with something small, and then I looked for other moments. I lied to my mom on the phone. Okay, it's too late, can't take it back, but I called her and told her the truth, and started practicing these little moments. My cellmate said I could have a piece of his candy. So I actually took one and not two, even though I want to, and so I started practicing these little moments and was getting better and better and better. And like I said, some days I still sucked at it. Some days I still do, even with years of sobriety, I don't have perfect honesty and integrity, and that's okay. I just keep practicing and do better the next day. So anyway, a funny thing started happening. I started kind of like myself, for the first time in my life. I started feeling confident about who I was, and I love this little self-love, and had some of the happiest days of my life up until that point, even though I was in prison, because I loved who I was, and prison is not a popular place to get better. And what I mean by that is, it's like crabs in a barrel, right? They want to drag you down. They don't like people getting better, because then they have to look inward, and they start feeling bad about themselves. So, I was made fun of. Drew, you're doing too much. You're taking too many classes. Like, I'm not in the section playing cards and working out. I'm taking classes. I'm reading books, and doing whatever I could to better myself for 2.5 years, and it wasn't fun, it was a difficult thing to do. And that's why I kind of take offense, maybe not offense isn't the right word, but when people try and say time within the prison doesn't count towards your sobriety time. But that was where my best work was done. That was where my hardest work was done. And it's not easy. It's not easy to change behavior in prison, because very few people there want to support that.
You don't have anybody to model those
Right.
behaviors, right? Nobody's there to say, come on, Drew, we'll do it together. You're on
Right.
your own.
Yeah, and there was a few people. I found some like-minded people, and several of those guys are still part of my life today and are doing well. And not to boast or to say, I told you so type of attitude, but most of those guys, or not most, but a lot of those guys that made fun of me, I've since gotten to treatment, and whether it's Steps or somewhere else, and they reach out to me on Facebook or wherever,
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And it's okay. It's okay that they weren't in the same spot as I was. Everyone has their path and their moment where the switch flips, and I have no judgment.
Does that kind of interaction? You know, you said that you got picked on and bullied a little bit in school, and here you are in the prison system, getting picked on and bullied a little bit in the prison system. Was there a difference in those two scenarios? Were you able to manage it better because of where your headspace was?
I was able to manage it better. There was definitely moments where maybe I regressed a little bit because of those past experiences, and my, I guess, trauma response, you could call it, would kick in, and I'd want to be cool again. But for the most part, because I loved who I was all of a sudden, I was able to manage it better. I was confident in who I was, and their opinion didn't matter to me as much.
Well, I wonder how many other people that end up in the same kind of place that you are and end up regressing because of their environment. They can't quite hold on long enough to overcome the environment. I mean, that'd be really hard.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to, whether you're in prison or you're in treatment or you're fresh out of treatment or wherever you are, to surround yourself with like-minded people. I always tell clients that come in to STEPS, it's perfectly natural and okay to be friends with the people that you're in treatment with. However, find also a few people when you get out that have some time, that have been sober for multiple years, that have success, because you're going to become like the people that you spend most of your time with, right? And that's what I did when I got out. Is I was very prepared, but I also surrounded myself with other people that had proven success.
When you, I imagine that you've told some people that, you've got to surround yourself with like-minded people, and you just see deer in the headlight. What are you talking about, Ray?
A lot of the time, maybe. A lot of the time I'll also get oh, yeah, totally, where, they're just kind of, it's lip service,
Uh-huh.
But, some people will listen and do it, it just depends on where everyone's at individually.
Yeah.
I went to treatment 7 times, before I started listening to the stuff that I'd heard.
Well, and I think of these kids in middle school or junior high or whatever, and for my own kids, I would say, look, you can find better friends, and they just look at me like, Mom, I can't find better friends. What are you talking about? And I wonder if it's the same thing, right? They don't know that they can go out and choose who they spend time with.
Yeah. I think it's probably just natural to spend time with whoever it just feels easiest to be around, especially with, romantic relationships, chasing that, when you get out of treatment or whatever. It's a lot harder to go up to someone at a meeting or wherever you are and, ask them if you can hang out with them, It's not easy, but, who said treatment was, who said recovery was,
But you said, these are people you're still hanging out with, and so those relationships, when you can reach out and find somebody like that, it changes everything.
Yeah, it does. And I've, I say this a lot. I've never met anyone with long-term recovery that got there by doing what they want to do. A lot of it is, you've heard here's your comfort zone. They can't see what I'm doing on the podcast by listening, and then way out here is where the magic happens.
Uh-huh.
You got to get out of your comfort zone if you want chance at success.
Well, and so often when I read clinical documentation of people who are in recovery, right, I'm reading their stories, and so often they started using when they were in junior high or high school, and it was the people they were hanging out with because it was easy, right? Those are the people who accepted them and said, yeah, be part of our group. Here's what we're doing, and away they went. So many stories seem like that.
Yeah, I think that's a common tale. I started later in life. I think that's more rare. Most people start young, and it's so hard at that age. I was speaking to 8th graders the other day at I spoke at a middle school, and I just wonder, are they hearing anything I'm saying? Are they gonna? Because I don't know that I would have at that age. What does this guy know? Because it's hard. It's peer pressure. You want your friends to like you. You want people to like you, and you'll do whatever it takes a lot of the time.
So when they introduce you in front of a middle school or junior high, what do they introduce you as? I mean, obviously it's Drew, but
Right.
what context do they give?
Well, I mean, when I do that kind of thing, the kids know what's coming up, and just recently when I went, the teacher just said, "Hey, this is Drew. He's here to talk to you about addiction. We've been talking about a little bit about addiction in class, and he's here to talk to you about his experiences." And I'll usually start with, "Hey, do I look like someone that was a former heroin addict and ex-con?" And usually they'll say no, and that's kind of the point of my conversation with them is. It can happen to anybody. It doesn't discriminate, I came from an upper middle class family in California, raised in the LDS church, and I became a homeless heroin addict and an ex-con, and that's the message I want to get across is like, this doesn't just happen to a certain population. I've seen lawyers, doctors, nurses, people in LDS bishoprics,
Oh yeah,
it knows no bounds.
moms and everybody, right? Nobody is, can escape that addictive pattern once they get into it.
Most of the celebrities.
Most of the celebrities, yeah. I can't even imagine being in that lifestyle with addiction. Just that the celebrities that do recover, I have immense respect for, because it would be that much harder with that much money and that much limelight and pressure.
So what's that message when you're at those schools? You're obviously it can happen to anybody, but what are the tools? What do you teach a junior high student to protect themselves?
So the teacher tells me before I go in, be as raw and honest as possible. The only don't swear excessively, but tell them like the nitty gritty. They don't really want us to talk much about the recovery part and like how great we're doing now. They want it to be more of like a scared straight type thing, So I'll talk with kids that age. I'll talk with them a lot about how much their words mean, and how much, we've the 4 agreements, being impeccable with your word. You never know how your words are affecting people, and how much that can mold someone for the rest of their life, and to be kind and, to be compassionate and empathetic and understanding and really difficult at that age, I'll talk with them about just the dangers of addiction in the context of, it can sneak up on you. It doesn't always come from a place of your friend having some marijuana or some alcohol that they offer you at a party. It can be a doctor, it can be, something that you don't expect, and I'll try and encourage them to talk about, or not, talk with someone that they trust about feelings, as far as depression or suicidal thoughts or, things that are going on in their life, and just communicating, that particular teacher, seems really good with that kind of stuff. He's got some students that stop by and talk with them and open up to him. And he mentioned that, of all their guest speakers that they have throughout the year, that the recovering addicts that he has come in is always the most popular and most effective. The last time I did it, not earlier this week, but I did it back in November also. A girl came up to me afterwards and talked about how her dad's an alcoholic and she sometimes struggles with suicidal thoughts, and it was hard because I wanted so bad to just like give this girl my phone number and help her, but that was not appropriate. But I'll text the teacher every now and again and just say, hey, how's this girl doing, that was encouraging to me that she felt comfortable to bring it up and talk with someone about it.
How do you get someone like that help? Here's a minor who's asking for help, but she's a minor. How do you get them? Like, what's the course of getting someone like that help?
That's a tough one that I don't know that I have a great answer to. I think, again, help has to come, from the family, and them being willing to recognize a problem and to get this young lady help. I think the school counselors and, clergy, whoever, can only do so much, but just be an ear, just someone that she can talk to, I think and that's what I told this young lady is like the communication is huge, communication and just saying it is so powerful, and I encouraged her to just continue to find people to talk to that she trusts that will help her. And that's going to serve her pretty well. But unless, the parents or whoever is her guardian is willing to put in that effort, it's really difficult,
Yeah, well, it is. And I mean, even with her suicidal, unless, even then the parents have to be willing to get her help.
Right. But, especially ones that are sick themselves, it's probably hard to do because then they have to recognize their own problem, and address their own problem. And that's a daunting task for a lot of people.
But it's incredible that she was willing, in a place where she could come up and even verbalize that and talk about it, because the secrets, right, the family dynamic is so often we don't talk about this. And the fact that she could, like you said, to be able to verbalize that and speak those needs and speak her concerns, I mean, that's half the battle in getting help.
Yeah. Just my hope for her is that, some of her classmates and peers, are kind to her and have some empathy. And it's hard to put yourself in that spot as an 8th grader to have the ability to put yourself in someone's shoes and find empathy and really have compassion for that individual. I remember what that's like. So it's a difficult place to be. That's why I'm such a huge advocate for them teaching stuff like that early on in school. These are the symptoms of depression. These are the symptoms of anxiety, this, that, and just talk about it. Make it less of a stigma. Just have it be just open forum, and make it less taboo.
Well, to have a safe place where they can talk about it and a place where they can. And it's hard, especially in junior high, because they can be so cruel to each other that if you expose yourself, you may end up being a target for, the rest of the year or however long.
Yeah.
And so it becomes really difficult as a teacher to try and provide a safe place where they're not going to get backlash from that.
Yeah. I just wish that I could help them understand that time in their life, at least who thought they were cool and who didn't, it's just not going to matter.
You can't tell them.
Yeah, I know. I really wish that everyone could understand that. It's just a blip. You're an adult way longer than you're a kid.
And it doesn't change when you're an adult.
Yeah.
Like we still try to be cool in different ways, right?
Yeah.
It just changes to your
I try
car, your
and
house,
fail.
or your job, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Well, it comes back to what Drew said. You've got to figure out how to love yourself. And I don't know that I've ever taken a class that teaches you the importance of checking in and making sure that you have integrity. That you are totally honest in all that you do, and all of the things that you learned in recovery. They don't teach that in school.
I know.
They don't bring that up.
I really wish, I've always said this, that I really wish everyone on earth could go to rehab. Because you learn so much about how to deal with your emotions in life and, and check in with yourself. And I think it could be beneficial for everyone.
Well, and there's connection there, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this is one of the huggiest industries I've ever seen in my life, right? Everybody hugs and everybody is checking in with you. How you doing, Drew? What's going on in your life today? And no, tell me, really, Drew, tell me what's going on in your life, right? And then they're teaching things, and they really are there to support. And so it's an environment that not everybody gets to live in.
Yeah, and that took me a long time to get used to, and even to this day, I've never been a big hugger. My family, even though we absolutely love each other, we weren't I love you people, and so now I hear it every day. Hey, love you, man. Love you, Drew. Here's a hug, I'm just like, and it's still like okay, I'm working on it.
Yeah. Well, and it's uncomfortable. I'm same with you. I don't come from a really touchy-feely family, but boy, there's no question as to whether we love each other.
Yeah.
Don't hug me.
Yeah.
Don't hug me, right?
I think there's different ways to show love, you know.
Yes.
Like my dad showed me. He never once said it, you know, but he showed me by showing up.
Yeah.
He was always there. He's at every game, you know. Just he showed up, and I never doubted that he loved me.
Yeah.
So,
Which is important for kids to know, right? Again, it goes
Yeah.
back to those kids is nobody's teaching them how to be okay with who they are and find meaning and purpose in the life that they have.
yeah.
So integrity is a pillar for you, obviously. What are the other things that what are the other tools for you that are daily?
Connection's huge. You know, I stay pretty involved. I still attend AA. You know, I attend the sober softball. You know, when it's going, I try and stay connected with other people in recovery. You know, honestly, what's been kind of important for me is to have both kind of friends. You know. It's, you know, and some people some people have like only recovery friends, and that's okay. But for me, it's been important to have kind of both sides, you know, and because I work in recovery, you know, a really difficult thing, or something I always tell people that are getting into working in recovery is that are in recovery. I think the cardinal rule is don't let your job become your program. You know, and because I've done that before. Before I went to prison, I worked at Steps once before as a tech down in Payson, and I let that job become my program. And so when I messed up and lost my job, I lost my program and I relapsed. You know, so I try to separate. You know, I definitely get some of my recovery from my job, and it does help me. But I have to have a separate program as well, and you know. Recovery friends outside of work, you know, my meeting that I go to, you know, and just do my own thing. But it's difficult when your job is recovery and then you have your recovery outside of work, you know, and then it's just like that's your whole life, you know, like you live and breathe recovery talk 24/7, you know, and so it's important for me to have other things outside of that, you know.
Well, and it is
so I don't get
because
burnt out.
it's a lot of recovery,
Yeah.
and there's life outside of recovery, right? Like there's a moving on to the next level of not just being in recovery, but but living, you know, just
Yeah.
wholehearted living.
Yeah. Yeah, not kind of, I guess, using it as another safety net, you know. But, you know, and some people need that kind of structure, you know, maybe the first little while where they're at meetings every day, you know. But I think people just kind of find their stride in recovery and what works for them and what doesn't.
And so what do you do outside of recovery that's different, your other part?
You know, I just have friends that aren't part of that world, you know, that I'll hang out with. And, you know, I have some friends that drink alcohol, you know, and they know that it's not something I want to be a part of, and they don't do it in front of me, you know, and I just don't engage in that activity, you know. And, you know, nobody in my family is part of that world, you know, and I spend a lot of time with my family, and, you know, and I have a fiance that actually, she is in recovery, but even we work our separate programs, you know, we don't go to meetings together. You know, she does Addict to Athlete, I do AA, and we keep those things separate, because that's another kind of dangerous pitfall, I think, that, you know, people get trapped in, is they find someone in the rooms of AA or whatever, and their program is one and the same, you know, and then the relationship doesn't work out and the program falls apart. You know?
Well, I can't think of how many times somebody's been in recovery and has ended up getting in a relationship and taking them right back out again.
Mm-hmm.
For one reason or the other, maybe the relationship they're using in the relationship, or one of them starts using, or because it doesn't work out, and then they go back to, you know, that escape that worked before.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the hardest thing for us to get through clients' heads, is the relationship thing. And thank goodness, I think the only way I was going to get through a year of not having a relationship is to be removed from it completely, which I was in prison. There was no females there, So that was the only way I was going to get an extended period of time just working on myself without a distraction of a romantic relationship, and I didn't even dive into one immediately after being released. I've been out of prison 5 years and, just barely, last year got into a serious relationship.
But it sounds like that was not easy to stay out of a relationship.
It wasn't. Don't get me wrong. Like I dated, I saw girls here and there, and it wasn't easy. I'm not cured. I still get depressed. I still have anxiety. I still have the tendency to make impulse decisions, and want a quick fix of, a romantic relationship that's going to make me feel better, and there's been a lot of trial and error. I've made a lot of mistakes, over the last 5 years since I've been out. I've compromised my integrity, but the difference is now I have tools to be able to bounce back and course correct and just continue working, like with the piano, I just keep practicing and don't give up.
That's incredible, and I'd love to hear how you've put safeties in place, both for you and your fiance, of how are you guys going to continue in your program and then be able to come together as a couple. But your recovery is still maybe not the most important, but it's vital. You have to do that piece too.
Yeah, and so we've both been pretty good with those boundaries of, making sure we keep things separate and, and also do things sometimes together that are recovery based, but our core program, and our meetings and stuff, we do separately.
Mm-hmm. So Drew, what's in the future for you? What do you see yourself doing in 5 or 10 years from now?
Who knows? I've already, kind of exceeded the expectations I had for myself, and I don't say that to brag, like I'm just as surprised as anybody. But, I've been at Steps for 4.5 years or so, and I'm the director of business development. And up until probably a year ago, I was still pretty immature, like I think I could have moved up in Steps a lot faster, but I was always just kind of like, I was good at my job, but I was just kind of a goofball, like joked a lot, and I still do, but, and maybe wasn't taken as seriously as I could have been, had I, been funny and goofy in the appropriate places, but I've the last year has been a big growing time for me, and I'm taken more seriously, and I'm moving up in the company, and now I'm looking at some other things. I always want to have my toe in the recovery industry on some level. Whether or not I'll be in this industry till I retire, I don't know. I've thought about, my fiance is a real estate agent, and thought about getting my license and doing some of that stuff together, and maybe just on the side. And, I own 2 homes, which just blows my mind still. It was just something that I never even considered that I would be able to do. I just always had that self-doubt, like, no, you're not going to be a homeowner and have a career and be this normal guy, and that was a big mind-blowing experience for me, and a big eye-opener when I realized, like, I can do things, like a lot of the times I don't even consider the fact that I can do this, and then when I do, I realize that actually doing it was way more easier than I had envisioned in my head. Like buying a home was way easier than I thought it was going to be,
Paying a mortgage is not a lot harder than
No, yeah.
Right.
I decided I wanted to buy a house. I talked with a friend in recovery who I was, asking him about how he bought a house and all this stuff, and he explained it to me, and I explained my finances and stuff to him, and he's like, "Dude, you can do it now." I'm like, "Really?" And a month later, I had a house.
Wow.
You know, so I still do that. I have this self doubt or this, I can't do this or I can't do that. And like learning an instrument, that's one thing I did in prison is I learned to play guitar and the ukulele. And it was something I always kind of wanted to do. I wanted to have that talent, but I just never even tried because I figured I couldn't. So it's just a matter of like putting in a little effort and a little research, and like turns out I can do some stuff.
Very cool. What's on your bucket list that you're hoping to accomplish?
Well, I think we'll have some kids.
Yeah.
I have a 12-year-old daughter who lives up in Boise, Idaho, and I see her a couple times a month. I go up there, or once a month usually, but and that's been just awesome. A lot of hard work to get that relationship back to where I want it to be, and that's something that's so important for people to understand. Is it takes a year to get a year of recovery. It takes 5 years to get 5 years. You can't get a year of recovery in 30 days, and so often we get into recovery and we just want all our stuff back and we want our kids back. And you hiked 50 miles into the woods, you got to hike 50 miles back out, right? And it takes what it takes. And that's one thing that I was actually pretty good at, is being patient, putting in the work. Consistent action over time equals trust, and I just put in the work. Slowly, I think, gained a little bit of my ex-wife's trust back, I don't think she'll ever completely trust me again, but I think, to the point where she's lightening up a little bit. We went to court, we worked some things out, and my daughter's in my life now. And anyway, I got off topic. But anyway.
That's a big piece.
Yeah.
That's a big piece of the future for you, though, right?
Yeah.
It's kids and family. And
yeah. So I think, my fiance's in her 30s, and she's always wanted kids, and it wasn't her addiction. She never had any. And so, I'll be the dad at the high school graduation that's like 60 years old. Big deal, But
This is Utah. That happens for
Yeah.
half of the kids.
yeah,
In the regular
that's
family,
right.
So it's just no big deal.
Yeah. So, we'll do that. And I think, I always had this fear for a long time of my life being cookie cutter, if that makes sense. Like the guy that just has his house and he has his job and he has his kids and he goes to work and he goes to baseball practice for his kids, and I had that fear for a little while. And now it just sounds awesome, like now it's cool. Like we have our house, we can look to the future and buying our little toys, whether it's a RV or, just little things like that, and traveling. I just love to travel, and all of a sudden all these possibilities are popping up of things that I can do. I've always wanted to go to Europe, and now that's a possibility. That's something that I could potentially do. And so really, my goals and my future is just to have that normal life, that I used to be scared of. Work until I retire and die feeling like I made a difference and I accomplished something, and that's okay. It's okay to just have that. I don't have to be famous or have that validation of doing something that is viewed as great, so yeah, that's
very cool.
hopefully what my future looks like. It's just boring.
Well, I
It's
think
been
that's
boring.
it's interesting though, because a lot of people, you ask them about their bucket list and they'll say, oh, I want to travel here, I want to do this, or I want to go skydiving or whatever, and you want normal,
Yeah,
right? You want
boring.
normal, boring life because you've done some of the other stuff and that wasn't.
I've had
didn't do
enough
it for you.
excitement for a lifetime,
Oh.
and hopefully I can just be part of helping people and bringing awareness to addiction and breaking down the stigma, and as well as mental health, and that's
Cool.
It's good enough for me.
Well, Drew, I suspect that people that are going to listen to this may want to get a hold of you. They might want to confide in you, or they might realize that they need some help. How will they get a hold of you? What's the best way?
I mean, I'm in business development. I'm answering my phone all the time. Like they can call me, like I don't care to give my phone number out. I can do that, whatever.
Yeah.
or contact Steps Recovery, or however.
They can go onto the website. Facebook,
Yeah.
LinkedIn, however.
Yeah, LinkedIn.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Drew Wilson, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah.
It's really just been a pleasure.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.